Yu-Gi-Oh can be an incredibly expensive game to play, but with a little patience, you can build a competitively viable deck without becoming a whale. Back in 2022, Konami released the Albaz Strike Structure Deck, which helped me get back into the game. 2 years later, it's still a solid way to get into the game while slowly building up its competitive power. Our plan is to go from this to this, a fully competitive build of the branded Despia strategy without breaking the bank. Only spending up to $15 a week buying singles, packs, and trading, we are going to prove that you can still have a good time with this game while playing branded on a budget. Welcome everybody to the first episode of Branded on a Budget. We are going to be starting today with our 3 copies of the Albaz Strike Structure Deck. But before we get into that, let me tell you a little about what the series is aiming to accomplish. Now, admittedly, Branded Despia is a very expensive deck to build, especially if you want to get it to full power when it comes to things like triple tactics thrust. However, luckily for us, there are plenty of ways to get started with the deck, especially since Rarity Collection 2 just released and made it so that we have easy access to copies of things like Crossout Designator, our big boy, Aluber the Jester of Despia, and other seemingly less impactful cards but very vital to the branded strategy like Fusion Deployment, Gold Sarcophagus, and Foolish Burial. Not to mention how easily accessible the Albaz Strike Structure Deck actually is, 2 years even after its printing. You can still go to any Barnes & Noble pretty much and find these on the shelf either behind the counter or somewhere else in the store, and they've got plenty, if your locals doesn't have one already. And with the 2024 tins on the horizon, we probably will have access to Triple Tactics Thrust as well as Guiding Quem the Virtuous at a more affordable price. Because of course, we're only spending roughly $10 to $15 a week on the cards that we want to get for this deck, barring the $30-ish for the structure decks at the starting point. Starting with just 3 structure decks, we're going to prove that you can have fun while playing the branded strategy, slowly building your way up to meta/competitive viability, while still having fun playing branded on a budget. Now, I'm sure plenty of you have seen what is inside of this structure deck, so we're going to go over it very quickly. We'll begin by opening just one of them for right now. Of course, we've got the trusty Tri-Brigade Mercurier, our copy of Springin's Kit, which we'll definitely be using right out of the box. The Golden Sword Soul, which we honestly won't be using, but then the 2 big guys. We got Mirror Jade, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest boss monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Lubellion is phenomenal for helping get out Mirror Jade. And then the ultimate card, Branded Fusion. Quickly, some more cards. Branded Sword. Branded Retribution will definitely be seeing some use. Fallen of Albaz, there he is. There's the boy right there. Albion is a great card. We won't be using a lot of these, but we will be using some of the Kaiju stuff. Artifact Scythe is now banned, so we of course can't use that. Keeper of Dragon Magic is going to act like our extra copy of Aluber because we do not have Aluber just yet. And then we got 2 great hand traps. Ghost Ogre, of course, is always great, but Effect Failure is even better in my opinion. Branded Lost is probably one of the most broken cards in the deck, making it so your opponents can't respond to your fusion summons. Branded and White will definitely be seeing some play, especially in the early stages of the deck. Gold Sarcophagus is at 1, and we will definitely have to play this just because of how good it is. And Pot of Extravagance, while I don't want to be using this the entire time, we will definitely be using it from the beginning. Called by the Grave is the one of that you have to play in case you get ashed and you happen to have it in your hand. Dark Ruler No More is the main reason why I'm building the deck the way I'm going to be building, which you'll see in just a second. I'll explain that later too. Honestly, I don't plan on using many of the traps out of the structure deck. However, if I were to, these would be the 2. Dimensional Barrier, and there can only be 1. Floodgates that are incredibly oppressive and toxic, but if we're just playing 3 structure decks, they're not terrible, so we might be side decking those. And here are the rest of the Albaz fusions. We've got Titaniclad, Brigand, Spirind, and Albion. Albion is probably one of our most important cards in the entire deck, and so we will be summoning it so many times. The other three, while Titaniclad is great, Brigand and Sprind may not be seeing very much play, Sprind more so than Brigand. And we get some lovely lore cards that show some of the artwork and story from the Albaz lore. Those are some fun tokens. However, I don't think we'll be using those. We can actually make a token with one of the cards from the structure deck, Branded Sword. However, I don't foresee us using that. So with these cards as our starting point, remember we get 3 copies of every single one of them because of the other structure decks that we have. So we'll be able to make a semi-competent deck that we'll be able to take to my little local setting and play some games with there. Of course, before that, I'm going to be building the deck and showing you the deck list and showing you what I think I can accomplish with this deck. Okay, so I think this is roughly what the list is going to be. This should be 40 cards. I'm going to have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that this is going to be what the list is. We've got 12 normal summons or starters. We've got 12 extender light cards, and we've got 8 hand traps, and we've got 4, 5, 6, 7 board breakers. And then the one called by, because of course you can't not play the called by. So the Fallen of Albaz actually doubles as a board breaker. I actually intend for this deck to be a going second deck, which is why I have the Kaijus, I've got the Dark Rulers, I've got the Fallen of Albaz, and of course I've got the 6 hand traps. These 2 aren't live until have a Albaz fusion on board, but theoretically if we go first we'll always have that too. So this is going to be our list. I'm probably going to do some tweaking as I play games, but for now, I'm pretty sure this is what we're going with. Like I said, we've got our starters. Albaz necessarily isn't a starter unless we're going second. These 2 obviously search Branded Fusion, and boom, Branded Fusion gets us everything that we want. We've got 3 Albion. Now, that might be a little bit controversial, having 3 Albion in your structure deck build, but I just look at Albion as an upstart goblin, so I think it's winning, plus Branded Retribution, it dumps from the deck, which helps us recur and potentially plays the grind game. The 3 Extravagance is pretty much a no-brainer. I mean, we're going to be dumping out some of this stuff. Hopefully, we don't dump out stuff we need. We've got 3 Mirror Jade, 3 Lubellion, 3 Albion, 3 Titaniclad, so, and then like 2 Sprind and 1 Brigand. So in theory, we shouldn't be dumping any of the stuff that we actually need. If we are lucky, I think we'll be good. If we banish 3 Mirror Jade, then we'll just scoop them up right then and there. But yeah, this pretty much is going to be our extra deck. We got, like I said, we got the 3 Mirror Jade, 3 Titaniclad, 3 Albion, 3 Lubellion, 2 Sprind, and 1 Brigand. Like I said, I want this to be going second. I want to summon Albaz so that I can break their board with Albaz. That's why I've got every one of the different Albaz fusions, even Brigands here. Plus, we need to max out our extra deck so that we don't banish the stuff that we want off of Extrav. Anyway, we've got the Gold Sark, which can banish our Mercurier, which is why we're running 2. I know it's searchable off of Lost, but yeah, we want to be able to banish it. Branded in white is when our hand is all bricky, full of Albions, Albazes, and even Keepers to potentially get into more stuff. Branded Lost needs no explanation. It is phenomenal. I even thought about bumping it up to 3 so that if we open it alongside Albaz, we can lay it down, then summon Albaz, then Albaz effect, and they can't respawn. So that might be up to 3. Probably just going to leave it at 2 for now because it is searchable off of Kit, I guess. Actually, I was going to say off of Lubellion, but hey, this is the budget build. This is the structure deck build, so not searchable off of what I'm thinking, but I think Kit does search it. So, and then of course, yeah, like I was saying, these are our hand traps. Effective Veiler is phenomenal. Ghost Ogre's great, and it may see some play, but at some point, I'm probably going to be phasing out all of our hand traps for a side deck thing. I don't potentially foresee us using a lot of the hand trap stuff. But for now, they stay because they're broken and we need them for our budget build. And of course, our going second cards, we'd love to see Dark Ruler going second so that we can pretend like we're going first. And then break their boards with the Albaz and the Kaijus. And like I said, once again, you have to run the one called by because, come on, it's called by. They're going to have Ash Blossom glued to their hand for our Branded Fusion. Hopefully, called by is glued to our hand. And with that, we're going to go ahead and sleeve up our deck. We're going to do a quick little test hand, and then we'll be heading off to our locals. I'm a fool, aren't I? I bought the wrong size of sleeves. Dang. Alright, let's go ahead and do some test hands. I'm going to go ahead and do a pile shuffle really quick. And then we will be able to see how bricky this deck is. I'm sure it's going to have plenty of bricks, but hopefully this is fairly optimized for at least starting out with 3 structure decks. When I originally got back into the game, I actually picked up Albaz Strike structure decks, and that was kind of my entry back into the game. I mean, I had started with Cyber Dragons when I first got back in, but I quickly picked up Albaz, and then eventually I got Sky Strikers, and then I doubled back into the Albaz branded stuff because I just love the lore so much, and that's kind of what got me going back into the game. And of course now it's become basically my favorite deck, and I want to show other people essentially how they can potentially get into the game, even with a deck like branded, which is inherently an expensive deck, how they can slowly put money into the game just like any other hobby, and eventually build up to competitive success. And we're going to play like we're going second, because like I said, I built this deck up to be a going second deck. And in theory, pretty much everybody wants to go first, unless I guess you're playing something like Tenpai, but for the most part, everybody wants to go first. So we're going to play like we're going second. Let's take a look at our opening hand. We have, oh my goodness, this hand ain't bad at all. We got an Effect Veiler, we got Albaz, which we got Branded Fusion. Yeah, so this hand honestly ain't bad at all. We'll go ahead and just discard the Effect Veiler, assuming that we used it on our opponent's turn, which we probably would have. And then we'll proceed to our turn, which is right at the beginning we draw. Oh my goodness, we top deck Albion, or the Upstart Goblin Dragon. So with this hand, you could just honestly normal summon the Albaz, fuse into something, whatever they might have, right away from the get-go, or see if Albaz gets negated, for example. Typically, everybody's opening board will have an extra deck monster, which essentially means you get a free Mirror Jade if Albaz's effect goes through. And luckily for us, we've got 2 copies of Spriggan's Kit, which means that one of them can be a discard. Alright, so let's go ahead and start. We are going to assume that they don't have something like Droll and Lockbird. So we're going to start by activating Albion's effect in the hand, which lets us dump 1 branded spell or trap. Typically, I always start by dumping a copy of Branded Retribution. Sometimes you'll have other things you want to dump, but for right now, we're just going to go right for Branded Retribution. Since we're doing it from our hand, we can shuffle and we get to draw 1 card. Like I said, it's the Upstart Goblin Dragon. I heard many people say Upstart Dragon as well. I think it's kind of funny. Albion goes on the bottom of our deck. We'll cut it. See what we drew. A Kaiju isn't bad at all. Like I said, we're assuming that they have a fully built board. For Kit's effect, we will want to be able to shuffle something back into the deck. And with Albaz's effect, we'll want to discard something. So, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and tribute over one of their monsters, their most problematic monster, using Radiant. Now, potentially, this could be something like an Apollosa, which would have a monster negate, which could, in theory, negate our copy of Albaz, which we do not want. However, I'm also assuming that they still have something from the extra deck on their field, which they most likely do, and we'll start by normal summoning Fallen of Albaz. We'll go Albaz effect, discarding our Branded Fusion, so that we can fuse with our copy of Albaz and their monster from the extra deck to make Mirror Jade. Now, this is just best case scenario. Keep in mind that they should still have something on board, even if it's Radiant, and you can fuse with Radiant. You can fuse with anything on their board if you've got a fully Albaz kitted extra deck like this. Next up, since we've got an Albaz fusion on the field, we can special summon Spriggan's Kit and activate her effect, which lets us search for a branded spell or trap. We're going to grab Branded Lost off of our kit so that we can get a ton of extra card advantage, shuffling back into our deck the other copy of Kit. We can go ahead and activate our Branded Lost, which won't do anything for now, but it'll be great for just a second when we banish our copy of Branded Retribution, so that we can target and add back our copy of Branded Fusion to our hand. Next, we can activate Branded Fusion, which lets us fuse from our deck to make something from our extra deck. So we're going to go ahead and use Albaz, and we'll want a light monster so that we can fuse into Albion. Once again, we're going We're going second, so we want to get the most advantage, potentially the most damage on our board. We'll probably just send the Thunder King Kaiju so that we can potentially draw back into our hand traps if the game continues on past this turn. We go into Albion here, and this is where it gets interesting. Because we got Branded Lost on board, our opponent can no longer respond to the first effect that we activate after we fusion summon. And so if we sequence this correctly, we can make it so they just can't respond to us at all. We can go Chainlink 1 Branded Lost so they can't respond to that, and Chainlink 2 Albion to fuse again. Since Albion's effect fuses, they cannot negate that activation either since Branded Lost is on board. So we'll go Albion to fuse. We can fuse using our Albaz and Thunder King Kaiju again by banishing them and summoning out a copy of Titaniclad. Titaniclad is great in this situation because it gains 100 attack per level of the monsters used to fuse. Since we got a level 4 in Fallen of Albaz and a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in our Thunder King Kaiju, we get a grand total of 1300 attack added onto Titaniclad. So we've got a big body here, we got another big body, we've got a non-targeting banish effect that we still haven't used, and of course we've got Kit still just chilling. Now we can resolve Chainlink 1, which is Branded Lost, by adding a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz from our deck. As of right now, it will almost always be Tri-Brigade Mercurier because that acts as a monster negate if we've got a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz on board. And that pretty much does it. That is our turn 1 combo. Say all they have left is this Radion on board, you could just activate Mirror Jade, sending something from your extra deck to banish it, and so you can just wipe their board entirely with what you have. If not, you can still do a ton of damage to whatever they have left on their board, and that's with just 3 structure decks. And with that, let's get ready to go to locals. Alrighty, I've got 2 games to show you today. The first one that you're seeing right now is versus Fire King Tri-Brigade. Really, it was just a Fire King deck though, because the Tri-Brigade stuff never made its way through the deck. I opened up with 2 Effect Veiler, a Ghost Ogre, a Kaiju, and 1 Branded Fusion. My opponent starts with the typical Fire King stuff by activating the field spell. He activates the field spell, and I chain Ghost Ogre. Luckily for him, he had another Fire King Island in his hand, and he was able to get both effects easily. It goes into Ponix, does the effect, and I decide to hit him with an Effect Veiler on that. So Ponix is negated, and he really doesn't have much gas left to go, and I go ahead and get started by drawing and going with my turn. Luckily, I do have the Branded Fusion, but luckily for him, he has the Ash Blossom. I was a little disappointed by this because at this point I had 0 things that I could do. I had 1 more Effect Veiler in hand, the Kaiju, and Tri-Brigade Mercurier that I drew off for the turn, and I set the Mercurier on the field right there. He starts his turn by activating Fire King Island again, destroying the Ponix, which adds from deck to hand a copy of Kirin. He has nothing left to go though, so he just sets another card and passes his turn back to me. In the standby phase, Ponix goes back to his hand. I did normal summon the Spriggan's Kit, which is a phenomenal top deck draw, and I activate the effect here, and he's got the Imperm. He literally had everything for me on this game, and I was struggling to get going. Luckily for me, I did have interruptions of my own. Anyway, I flip summon the Mercurier, and I attempt to go to battle and swing for some damage. In the main phase before I enter the battle phase, though, he does destroy the Ponix to special summon Kirin, which makes it so that I can't get any battle damage in. And I pass, reluctantly, my turn. He normal summons the Ponix for the effect, and I drop my second Effect Veiler. Then once again, Fire King Island goes off and does its fun things to get I believe another Kirin? Yes, that's right, another Kirin. So he destroys the Kirin to special summon the Kirin, activates the Kirin effect to special summon the Arvata. Arvata is a little scary for me because it's a monster negator, and I definitely need my monster effects to go. He goes battle phase and swings into my monsters, clearing my board entirely. Unfortunately, anyway, even if they were still on the board, they couldn't do anything in their current state. Kit can't do anything, and Mercurier can only do things if I've got an Albaz Fusion on board. He passes his turn, and I believe here I top deck another copy of Branded Fusion. Standby phase, Ponix comes back. We go main phase 1, and I tribute the Arvata with my Kaiju so that he can't have any monster negates. And then I did top deck that Branded Fusion. I throw it down, and I start going off with Branded Fusion, sending Albaz and a Kaiju, the light attribute Kaiju, to summon Albion. I go Albion effect to fuse, and he has the Veiler this time, so I literally can't even play the game at this point. I've got nothing in hand, I only have Albion, I swing into Kieran for 100 damage, and because it's a Fire King monster, it gets some special effect when it's in the graveyard, and I don't know why I even bothered attacking. I probably shouldn't even attacked. He specials the Ponix, specials the Arvada back thanks to the Kieran hitting the grave, and it's not looking too good for me at this point. Right here, I'm just checking Arvada to see where the effect is negated, to see if graveyard effects are also potentially negated. And unfortunately for me, it does. So if Albion goes to the grave, he can negate my Albion effect. He searches the Grunix at the Ponix, I pass my turn, and he draws, goes in the Fire King Island, destroying the Ponix, which triggers Grunix, and Grunix can special, and Ponix gets the ad, or I guess Fire King Island gets the ad from the Ponix being sent. He adds the Fire King quick play spell that I don't remember what the name of it is, but it blows something up. He goes Grunix effects for special summoning. He can dump a Fire King monster from his deck to gain half of its attack, which he sends another Grunix to buff its attack up even more. He swings into my Albion and then swings in for some more damage, leaving me with a measly 150 life points left. Good thing I gave him that Kaiju, right? I activate the Albion in the end phase to add a branded spell or trap, and he lets it go through, thankfully. I don't know why he didn't negate with the Arvada. It would have been the death sentence of me, but he let it go through, and I was able to grab a copy of Branded Fusion, my third one of this duel. I draw for my turn, I go Branded Fusion, sending a copy of Albaz, and this time Albion, to summon Titaniclad. Summoning Titaniclad was my attempt to make a big monster, and it doesn't necessarily do anything because he's got that quick play spell which can pop one of his monsters and destroy my monster, which triggers Garunix to special summon itself back to the field, gets another effect on special summon, and at that point I pretty much just start packing up because there's no way I'm getting out of this. Our second game is against Invoked Dogmatica Shaddoll. Now, I must put a warning or a disclaimer at the beginning of this. I definitely cheated at one point, and we'll talk about it when we get there. Anyway, I lost the die roll, but my opponent made me go first anyway. Start by using Albion, dumping Branded Retribution. I normal summon Kit. I get Kit effect to grab a copy of Branded Lost because I already have the Branded Fusion in my hand. My opponent has no interruptions, so I'm just going as hard as I possibly can with this opening. Branded Lost into Branded Fusion. Fusion discarding the Thunder King and Fallon of Albaz to summon Albion. I summon Lubellion. I use the Branded Lost effect to get a card, which I believe is Mercourier. Yep, there it is. There's a Tri-Brigade Mercourier. And then I do next chain, which is Lubellion, discarding the Ghost Ogre to fuse into Mirrored Shade. I do think that I should have kept the Ghost Ogre for the deck that I'm playing, which is a Invoked, which could have the field spell shenanigans, but luckily for me, it didn't actually really do anything because it was more of a Dogmatica Shaddoll deck rather than an Invoked this time around. Anyway, my board is Mirrored Jade with Mercourier in hand. My opponent starts out with Fusion Deployment, revealing Grand Guignol to special summon Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous from the deck. He activates Cartesia effect, and I chain effect Veiler to negate the effect of Cartesia. Next up is Shaddoll Fusion, which fuses Aerial and Dragon to make App Cologne. Now, this is a dumb thing on my part, a little bit of a misplay. I did not read App Cologne. I did not know what App Cologne did, but anyways, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2 was Aerial, Chainlink 3 was Dragon. I asked for the targets for Aerial so that I can potentially get the Branded Fusion back to my hand off of Retribution. He targets Retribution, Fusion, and the Kaiju, because there's really not much else left in the graveyard to target. I do Chainlink 4 as Branded Retribution, targeting my Branded Fusion by banishing itself to add it back to hand. And this is where I should have chained the Mirror Jade, but I completely forgot or didn't realize what App Cologne was even doing. Anyway, Branded Retribution gets banished. I add Branded Fusion back to hand. Aerial resolves and the Thunder King is banished. Dragon pops Branded Lost. And App Cologne negates my Mirror Jade for the rest of the turn. So yeah, that was a little bit of my quick little misplay. I probably should have done something. I should have read App Cologne, and I should have asked for targets. I don't know if App Cologne targets, I'm just throwing stuff out. Anyway, he continues his turn by activating the Deer Servant, sending Elder Entity Entis to the grave to pop one of my cards. He targets the Mirror Jade to destroy, and I think, well, its effect hasn't been used. I might as well chain Mercurier to negate the effect here, and that goes through. He proceeds into the Dogmatica stuff by special summoning Ecclesia effect, searching for Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis specials herself because there's a Dogmatica on board. Fleur-de-Lis buffs their attack by 500. They crash. Mirror Jade and Fleur-de-Lis crash because they're both 3k. I was checking the App Cologne there just to make sure the effect doesn't continue to be negated. But yeah, Mirror Jade effect engrave. App Cologne's 25 crashes into my Albion. He activates App Cologne effect engrave to add Shaddoll Schism from deck. And then he attacks me with the the Dogmatica Ecclesia for 2,000, so I take 5. In the end phase, I activate my Albion to add a copy of Branded Fusion. I think Branded Fusion. Branded Lost. I already have the Branded Fusion in hand because of the Branded Retribution. That's correct. Starting my turn, I activate Branded Lost, and Schism is chained in my main phase 1. Schism fusion summons by banishing Dragon and Aerial to fuse into a copy of El Shaddoll Winda. Winda's on board, making it something I can only special summon once per turn. I fuse using Albaz, of course, and then the Thunder King Kaiju into Titaniclad to get a 3800 beat stick. I activate Branded Lost, and then I grab the Mercury off the Branded Lost, and then I proceed to battle phase, swing into Winda to get rid of it, and do a little bit of damage. Winda's activated in Graveyard to add back Shaddoll Fusion. I decide to change the Mercurier here because I don't really want that. I hope he's got nothing left in hand. I pass my turn, and he is able to do some stuff by activating Shaddoll Schism, by sending the Fleur-de-Lis and the Winda to make Shaddoll Construct. He activates Invocation to fuse from hand into with Cartesia, and I think it was, I don't know what the other one was in hand, but they make Grand Guignol. They use Grand Guignol effect, sending Garura to draw a card, activating another Nadir Servant, sending a copy of Titaniclad to grave, and searching for, or not searching, but adding from graveyard the Dogmatica Ecclesia. Ecclesia specials herself, she searches, and he grabs a copy of Dogmatica Punishment. Goes battle phase, not crashes, but swings into Titaniclad Contract effect to destroy the monster. Attacks with 25 and a 1500 into me, so I only have 1,000 life points left. It's a little bit rocky at this situation. End phase effects, they do a Titaniclad effect, and I do a Titaniclad effect as well. My Titaniclad searches me a copy of Branded in white, and their Titaniclad grabs them a copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous. Actually, no, I don't get Branded in white, excuse me. I got Fallen of Albaz. I got Fallen of Albaz so that I could normal summon Albaz. So, right here, this is where I cheated. I made a big blunder. I call myself out later in the same duel. I'm saying that they can't respond to my fusion effect right here. They, of course, can respond to my fusion effect. They just can't negate the fusion effect here. And so, this is where I cheat. I basically gaslight my opponent into believing my effect, even though they continually read it multiple times. In hindsight, I feel absolutely terrible. I'm a big fool. I don't know. It's water under the bridge. I talked to my opponent about it. We'll see it in a duel in just a little bit, but I do talk to my opponent about it. They're chill with it. They're like, whatever. I asked them if they want to, like, rewind the couple of things that I did. They decided it's just whatever. We'll just continue. We'll go on. And there it is. I summoned the Mirror Jade with their Construct and the Albaz. After the fusion was resolved, I did Branded Lost to add a copy of Albion from deck. I activate the Albion, sending a copy of Branded White, which is my second to last branded spell in my deck. And I send Branded White to grave, and I draw one card. I activate a Branded Fusion that I have in my hand. And right here is where I start to realize that I cheated my opponent. I start thinking, oh shoot, yes, they can respawn, they just can't negate. And because I thought of the whole Ash Blossom scenario with Branded Loss and Branded Fusion. And so I realized I was cheating. They could have, in fact, activated the Dogmatic punishment on their side of the field, and I honestly don't know how much it would have affected the overall duel. They would have prevented a Mirror Jade on the field, and I do use the Mirror Jade effect, I believe, this very turn, but I probably just would have went into Mirror Jade right here with the Branded Fusion anyway, so I'm not entirely sure how much it would have affected the overall duel. Not to mention, in the end, we have the monsters and stuff. We'll see in just a second. Anyway, Branded Fusion resolves. I summon Albion. I use Albion effect to get Titanic Cloud on board. And then I activate Mirror Jade, sending Lubellion, because at this point it doesn't really matter, and I banish their Grand Guignol. Now, this is where the thing might have changed. He could have used Grand Guignol effect at some point to summon the Despion Lulu Lilith in his extra deck. That said, I don't know how much Lulu would have been able to help out in this situation. Schism goes off, summoning App Cologne, getting rid of my Mirror Jade with the Schism effect. He's got App Cologne. I crash into App Cologne with Albion, knowing that I'll be able to get the search for Branded White in the end phase. And I swing with Titanic Cloud over the Ecclesia to bring him down to 4100. I go end phase effect, end phase Albion effect to add the Branded White, preparing myself for my next turn. I don't think I've got much in my hand at this point, so I'm just really hoping he doesn't have as much in his hand either. My Titanic Cloud on board is 3800, so I'm pretty comfortably safe behind it. He ends up setting one card and setting one monster, passing. I activate the Branded White to fuse my Albion in my graveyard by banishing into Lubellion. I go Branded Lost Chainlink 1, Lubellion Chainlink 2, sending Extrav for cost to fuse into another copy of Mirror Jade. I think this is my final copy of Mirror Jade. And then Branded Lost adds me one copy of Albion. Now this is where it's a little spicy and interesting. I normal summon the Keeper and discard to search one fusion spell. I search the branded fusion, which essentially cleans up the rest of the game from here. So once again, I don't know how much my little cheat actually affected the duel. I'm not sure why they didn't activate the Dogmatic punishment in the back row at this point or at some point. I probably still would have had game, but it was pretty dang close. Anyway, I get another Titanic Cloud on board. I swing with Keeper into their set monster. I swing with Titanic Cloud directly, and then finish the game with an Albion. So, lessons are learned here. We don't cheat. We do not want to be cheating. I felt, like I said, I felt very, very bad about it. My opponent's really, really cool though, so they were chill with it. They're like, whatever, it is what it is. And I still feel bad about it. In hindsight, especially looking back with how much I caught, but it makes me feel slightly better knowing that it might have not affected that much. Because I would have been able to get another Mirror Jade out that exact turn. I could have gotten rid of the construct in some way with the Mirror Jade, I believe, banishing. The Grand Guignol effect probably wouldn't have affected me very much with Lulu Lilith. And they have a Quem, but I don't think Quem does anything in their deck without the Albaz stuff. So, it is what it is, and those are the duels. So, we're back with the deck, and honestly, I gotta say, I'm very happy with how well it performed. It did pretty dang good for the most part. I had troubles getting through multiple interruptions, and in theory, that's pretty much what we're going to be helping out with in the future with our new stuff we're going to be slowly adding in. But yeah, honestly, it did what it needed to do. I mean, Mirror Jade was always incredible because it's Mirror Jade. Having 3 of them in the extra deck actually came up in that last match. Honestly, one of the biggest W's, I would say, is the Branded Retribution. Having that in the graveyard to add back Branded Fusion instead of letting it be banished by the Aerial in Game 2. I will say, Game 1 was very, very rocky with all those interruptions, and so I'd love to be able to play through more interruptions. However, I don't necessarily know if the things we're planning on adding next time will be helping out too much with that. I think mostly the stuff we're going to be adding next is going to do 2 things. It's going to make our deck more consistent, which surprisingly was pretty consistent these last 2 duels we saw. But yeah, more consistency. And then 2, not just end on just Mirror Jade. It's a little like Mirror Jade, don't get me wrong, it's incredibly strong. Mirror Jade is awesome. But I want to do more stuff than just Mirror Jade and potentially a Tri-Brigade Mercourier in hand. And so with that said, next time, we're going to the theater. It's so cringe.